everyone, I'm Dr. Sonal Jain from Department of Anthropology, University of Delhi. In this series of forensic science lecture, we are discussing about the question documents. Question documents, also known as the disputed documents or the suspected documents, can be found in various different types of the crime scenes. They can be used in the various cases where they might be used with the students, professionals or the families when there are will cases. The question document analysis always require the comparison with certain other documents. Those documents through which we make the comparison of question documents, they are known as the specimen documents or the admitted handwritings or admitted signatures or the admitted documents. So, the specimen documents or the admitted documents, whenever any forensic document analyzer is analyzing the documents, he should mark the documents properly. So, whenever the question document is there and the thing or the signature or the handwriting which is under question, they should be marked as Q1, Q2, Q3, and in the specimen document they should be marked as S1, S2, S3, and for the admitted writings they should be marked as A1, A2, A3. So, whenever we have the GEQD's Government Examiner of Question Documents, those forensic examiners, whenever they are analyzing these question documents, comparing it with the specimens or the admitted handwritings, they always use a red pencil and the blue pencil. So, the question as well as the standard signatures writing should be marked properly after encircling the disputed and the standard documents with red pencil and a blue pencil respectively. The red pencil should be used for the question documents and the blue pencil should be used for the admitted handwritings or the specimen documents. Now, why it is necessary to mark the documents as Q1, Q2, Q3 or S1, S2, S3 or A1, A2, A3? This is because whenever we are writing a report and we are mentioning, it is always difficult to mention the text. How will you mention the text if there is a signature? There could be illegible things because some people they do not write their full names. There might be certain lines which are going upside down or maybe going vertical and horizontally in different signatures. In such cases, if we are encircling a particular point in the question document or the disputed document, then we say the particular Q1 which is encircled in red is showing similarity with S1, and then we can tell the various points that the touching which is going above or which is coming down, and then we can compare it with that. So, the markings are necessary so that we can see or we can compare it with and we can clearly mention when we are making a report which is being submitted to the court of law. So, the question document should be signed by the IO as well as the victim along with the two witnesses. The standard document should be taken in the presence of two independent witnesses duly signed and attested by the investigating officer, and the admitted documents should be signed by the victim wherever present along with the signatures of IO, and if possible supported by the witnesses who are well acquainted with the writings of the victim. Or similarly in the case of the suspect, if we are taking the admitted writings, there should be one person who is aware of the handwriting of the person, and the witness should say that this handwriting belongs to this suspect. There are certain measures which should be taken into account by a forensic document examiner while taking care of the question documents. Care and handling of the documents while taking, we never staple, put pins or clips, and do not make any perforation marks in the document. Now, why it is said that we never use staples? Because the question document, in certain cases, sometimes the document is a part of a previous further document and it has been taken out from a big document. Then it already contains some staple marks. We can get to know to which particular staple or the part of document is belong depending upon what perforations are already present. If we make our new holes in the document, it would be very difficult to comment on such staples, pins or clips which was put in the document before. Similarly, no folds should be put in the question documents. We never touch a document with pencil, pen or another pointed instrument. Usually what happens, we either put these documents inside the transparent sheets and we make a photocopy of the question document and then we compare side by side with the standard documents or the unprinted handwritings. Never glue the pieces of the torn documents or fragmented documents onto a background. If we want to see, then similarly we will do the similar thing, that we will take transparent sheets and between that we will just keep the pieces of the torn document and try to make a collage out of it and try to look whatever the whole document looks like. But we never glue the pieces together of a torn document. We never erase anything from the question document and never make any tracings on the document. If any of this thing is being done by the question document examiner, then we say that they are tampering the evidence. That question document is evidence which is being submitted to the forensic science laboratory. So, it should not be tampered to. We never carry the document loosely in pocket. Although it is said the document should never be carried out or any evidence should never be carried out of the forensic science laboratory. We do not allow other people to handle or tamper the question handwritings. We do not allow the suspect to handle or see the disputed document, because if suspect will see the question document, they will try to disguise the handwriting accordingly. We do not allow any person other than a properly trained forensic scientist to make chemical or other test on the document. Do not cut or tear a document. Do not underscore, highlight or circle words. So, to maintain the authenticity, because in certain cases there might be certain times that the question document is under examination, is a very old document and is very fragile. So, an expert, and that is the only piece of evidence which we have, we cannot gain that question document back again. So, it is with every evidence in the forensic science that it should be treated with utmost importance, because the evidence will never come back to you. So, it is better to conduct those tests which are non-destructive in nature. For example, we have video spectral comparator, we have docu-box. These are big instruments which certain non-destructive tests like different lightnings are present. We have white light, we have yellow light, we have UV light, IR light at different wavelengths. We have oblique light, we have transmitted light. In all these lights, if we see the document, then we can get to know much information in different wavelengths, and we do not have to put destructive test on the question documents. The documents, whenever we have get the question document for the analysis, they should be stored and transported in an envelope large enough to hold the document without folding. The folds should never be made. The document should be photographed or photocopied or scanned as required, because if we have to conduct or if we have to study the document, you can study the photographed part. The photocopies mostly in the question document examiner, we photocopy to 10x, 100x. So, whenever we are getting supposedly a signature is there on a check which is under question, it is a question that the forgery might be maintained, that the signature does not belong to the person whose the check belongs to. So, in such cases, whenever we have to see whether that particular signature is being done by forgery or is being transplanted or is being carbon copied, for such cases, whenever we are taking that signature, we photocopy it 10 times, 20 times, 30 times. So, when we have the enlarged view, then we can see that the person might have made the mistakes when they have put the fourth signature over the check. So, the document can be photocopied, it can be scanned or it can be photographed, but it cannot be cut or torn into any pieces. The document should be protected from excessive heat, light and dampness. A complete history of each document should be prepared, showing date, place and from whom it was obtained. the document should be handled as little as possible. That means we should keep the document protectively at a protective place. For example, we should not eat or drink with the question documents on our table. So, the analysis whenever is being conducted, the question document should always be kept in the laboratory and should not be kept with any heating, any stuff for the eating or for drinking, because that might spoil our question document. So, this forensic document examination, which plays an important role in the scientific examination of white collar crimes and most importantly the financial crimes. It has undergone deep sea change with the introduction of sophisticated instruments and change in crime trends. Like we have discussed, for example, we have various kind of ESDA, we have DocuBox, we have VSC comparators which can be used in various cases. There can be a number of problems which can be solved in a forensic document laboratory. We can identify the writings or signatures by comparing with the sample and admittedly genuine writing signatures of the suspected person, and we can fix the authorship. We can tell clearly whether this person has written this particular document or signed this particular document or not. So, when we talk about the application of forensic stylistics for the personal identification, we see that the detection of forgery and fixing the authorship of the forged writings or signatures can be done. We can identify what kind of forgery is this. We can identify who is the author of these forged handwritings or the signatures. We can identify the typescripts, printed matters, computer printouts from dot matrix printers, inkjet printers and laser printers. So, when we talk about the different types of the computer printouts, there are specific characteristics, the class characteristics as well as individual characteristics which can help us in knowing that which printer has given the printout. So, when we talk about the class characteristics, supposedly if you have the 5 documents, you can easily tell that this is printed from dot matrix. Nowadays, dot matrix printers are obsolete. So, mostly we have the laser printers or the inkjet printers through which we get the printouts. But there are certain point of time, or maybe the old documents which we say, they might be printed with the dot matrix printers. So, now the question here is that if we have identified that this particular document is printed from the dot matrix printer or the inkjet printer, can you say that it has been printed from this specific printer? In certain cases, yes, it can be answered. For example, if a printer has some corrupted ribbon inside, or it has some specific problem that the printer gives a printout which is not uniform, then that disuniformity, or we say the ununiformity in the printout, we can identify, yes, this particular document has been printed from this particular printer. So, we can detect and decipher the alterations including additions, overwritings, obliterations, indentations, physical and chemical erasures. So, alterations is different types of alterations when we talk about the additions. For example, a person is having a will and they have not mentioned a particular line. So, the document is original, the will is original, but their children might have added one line in the will which is of their personal financial use. That particular line which is being added in the original document is known as the additions. Certain cases obliterations are there, that the previous lines are being cut using some physical or chemical erasures and the new line is being overwritten on them. There could be overwritings, there could be some indentation marks which are present. So, all these can be identified using various different sources of light and if required using different chemicals. Another important question or the problem which can be solved by the forensic stylistics is the determination of sequence of strokes. That is, to determine in which order the writing is being made or the signatures is being made or the typescripts etc., and says that which one is written or typed first. So, for example, if a signature, the person is making a signature in a particular flow and then he is coming back to the first alphabet of the signature. But the forger who is trying to forge the signature, he doesn't know the correct sequence of strokes. He might put the line first and the dots later. So, depending upon how the strokes are being made, by magnifying and using the 3D microscope, for example, it's a stereo microscope which is most commonly used in the forensic document analysis, we can easily say that which stroke was made first. If two strokes are striking, then we can say the stroke which was made later is on the upper side and the stroke which was made before, it is on the lower side. So, that can also be determined in the cases of the forensic document analysis. Then for the examination of the serrated edges of two torn sheets of paper, we can identify if the two sheets once constituted the same sheet of paper or not by placing them in juxtaposed position. We can take if a person has torn a sheet into two parts, then we can identify the two sheets can be compared simultaneously, and if they fix between each other, then we can say they came from the same sheet of the paper. Also, we can determine the relative age of a document including ink and paper. Also, the one point which should be considered well, that the absolute age cannot be determined, but the relative age can be determined. So, this relative age, how it can be determined is like, we can say, some people say that the will of the person is being made in the year 1965, but someone has forged the will and made in the year 1990s or 2000s, and they are using the pen which was not even being developed in that year. So, going through that, we can get to know that particular type of ink was not even available in that year of 1950s or 60s or 70s, or the particular paper was not even available. So, that means that document is a forged document. We cannot exactly say the age of a paper by saying that this paper was made in this particular 4 January, 5th January 1968, 1978. That cannot be answered, but it can be answered the contemporary period by knowing what time that ink was being made, what time that paper was being manufactured. The big companies, they put certain markers in their inks and papers, so that we get to know the aging of different inks and different papers. They put certain fluorescent markers, and which get their fluorescence get delayed with the age, and we get to know that how old is this ink or this paper. We can also decipher typewritings on a chart documents. Another important forensic stylist or forensic question document examiner, we go for the detection of the counterfeit currency. Supposedly, if someone is making the copies of different currency notes of 500, 2000, 100, then that counterfeit currency can be identified using just various light sources, various ultraviolet light, through which we can identify whether the currency is forged or the counterfeit currency or it is the original currency. Another important point where we get the inquiries from the question document analysis is for the travel documents, which includes passports, security documents, etc. In such cases, there are certain passports, we know there are certain security features which are being incorporated by the government of different countries. Like government of India has incorporated many features in the passports of Indian citizens. We can easily identify whether the passport is original or it is a fake one or it is a counterfeit one. Similarly, with the visas or various other security documents which we need for the travelling. Apart from that, the detection of forgeries in the credit cards, master cards, debit cards, smart cards, etc., that can also be identified if the person is making a duplicate copy of different credit cards, etc. Also, another point is the data recovery of the lost, deleted files, folders in case of computer related frauds, which is nowadays is mostly covered by the cyber forensics, but certain point it can come to the question document examiner. On speaking about the problems which cannot be solved in a document laboratory is the determination of absolute age of the document, although we have discussed that we can comment on the relative age of the document. We cannot fix the authorship of a trace writing or signature. So basically a traced writing or signature is supposedly I have signed at certain place and the person has put a carbon copy and directly traced my signatures on another sheet of paper, or maybe taken my e-signature and pasted over there. In such cases, the individuality of the forger will not come into the handwriting. The individuality of the forger will only come if the forger will write the signature from his or her own hands. So, in case of a traced handwriting or the traced signature, the authorship cannot be fixed to the author. In the cases of slow and limited writings or initials, it is very difficult to get to know that who is the suspect and who might be the criminal who has committed the crime. So, the person or the cases where just a single stroke of signature is present, in such cases it gets very difficult to comment on who is the author of these particular initials, whether it is traced, whether it is forged, or if it is forged then who has forged that. In computer printouts it is difficult to get to know the typist, but if a typist is making specific mistakes in some spellings, in some punctuation marks, so such cases we can identify the typist. Fixing authorship of a signature on a photocopy and a fax message, because in such cases the author is not leaving his or her individual characteristic, so we cannot comment on that. Any writing surface containing invisible, partially visible or visible matter or writing strokes and conveys certain meaning can be defined as a document. So, any crime scene, whether any table it's there, any mirror it's there, any piece of paper it's there, any tissue paper it's there, any door, whatever evidence you can find on which any handwriting mark is present there, you can say that it is a piece of document which is under question. Anything in general is identified through its peculiarities. More is the deviation of letter design from the copybook form, more is the identifying value. The person who writes in a very specific way has making designs in the handwritings with a very peculiar ways and has very peculiarity of writing numbers, that person, the chances of identification of his or her authorship is much more, because that is different from what is present in the copybook form. The person who has very least or very less deviation from the copybook form, the less is the identifying value of that particular authorship or that particular document which is present there. More is the frequency of any writing habit, less is the identifying value, whereas less is the frequency, the more is the identifying value. Also, as we say, the humans, they are not machines. In fact, what I have written today, I cannot copy the exact same in the next minute or in the next hour or in the next days. So, when I cannot write similarly, exact similar of what I have written before, then no two persons can write exactly alike, and therefore no two writings are all can anytime be identical. In fact, if it is written by the same person, we can say the identical is the word we are using because there will be some natural variations always present. So, they can never be identical until and unless they are the exact copy or they are being traced. The two writings which are said to be the similar when there exists significant and sufficient similarities between the two sets of the writing. So, we can say these writings, two writings show similarities, but we will not say that these two handwritings are identical. There are the fundamental differences which are present in the writing characteristics, and the two writings are said to be written by the different authors. Merely seeing the similarities or differences with eyes is not enough. There should be keen observations and in-depth study of the writing habits. A famous author who has written many books for the question document is Mr. Albert Osborne. He has said on the authority of this subject that things not seen until they are looked for and looked at, and they must be seen with both the mind as well as with the eyes before they are properly understood. So, supposedly if you are analyzing a particular piece of handwriting, then you can see it might look to you that these handwritings are different from each other. But as we have discussed, we should properly mark those handwritings as question and specimen and compare the similar smaller points to know whether they are different or similar. So, the thumb rule for identifying the genuineness or forgery is that anything of any kind that shows carelessness on the part of the writer is indicative of genuineness, whereas anything of any kind that shows care and attention given to the writing process is strong sign of forgery. So, to conclude, I will say that the writing which is written very carefully and with a very right flow, with a very arm movement, that is a genuine handwriting, but with very pen pauses, with very much attention, that is a forged writing. So, a forensic document examiner must deep dive into the handwritings, look into the shapes, how they are being formed, to analyze and then can submit a conclusive report to the court. Thank you.